Hey up me ducks, what you on we? This is Mitch and today I've come to Little Beach. So whilst we're down here today, what we're going to do is we're going to try and find 5 photo opportunities that I can use to try and demonstrate 5 compositional techniques. And these are different photographic techniques that I use and rules that I try and apply when I'm taking photos. And I'm by no means an expert, but this is how I think about photos. And you may disagree with some of the photos I take in terms of the compositional rules that I'm trying to represent, and that's okay. Feel free to comment in the comments section below. I'm always learning. So what are those 5 compositional techniques that we're going to try and focus on today whilst we're here at Little Beach? Leading lines, framing, symmetry, patterns, and contrast. And as I get to each of those photo opportunities, I'll talk you through how I think that rule is applying to the particular photo or scenario that I'm photographing as and when I get to each one of them. But with that said, let's crack on and see if we can find some shots. Enjoy. So the first photo I'm looking for is one that represents the leading line compositional technique. And this is pretty simple. The idea behind having a leading line in a photograph is some line that draws the viewer's eye into the frame. Now that can just be drawing the eye along the line itself, maybe looking from one corner to the other corner or from the front to back of the image, or it can be a line that guides the viewer's eye from the start of the image right through to the subject of the image. And I'm here right now with a perfect example of that. What I've got here is I've got a small stream that runs from the top of the beach right down into the water, and that provides a perfect leading line to draw your eye into the rising sun, which is coming up on the horizon over to my left here. And I'll spin around and show you a quick video of that right now. So what I'd like to do is position myself on one of the rocks that's in the middle of this small stream and try and get the photo of the sun rising with this leading line, drawing your eye straight through the scene right up to where the sun is rising on the horizon. Now I can go high with my camera and capture more of the stream in as the midground, or maybe some of the rocks as the foreground and the rising sun as the background, or I could go a little bit lower on my camera tripod, capture less of the stream but just enough to provide that leading line, but with more of the sea and the rising sun as the background and the midground there. So I'm going to play with a couple of different setups, but the general rule here is that we've got a leading line, which is the stream that you can see on the screen now, and that leading line will draw your eye, or should draw your eye, over to the rising sun. If that doesn't happen, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. So this is how I've set my camera up for the first shot of the morning. So I've positioned myself on a rock here, which is in the middle of this stream that leads all the way down to the water's edge there at the minute. We can see the sun is rising over there on the horizon. We've got some awesome looking cloud formations up there as well, which is pretty cool. So I've got my camera set to f8. It's a 1.3 second exposure time, or shutter time. The reason I've done that is because I'd like to get some of that blur in the water as well. I think that looks quite nice. But the focusing for the foreground elements here is a little bit off. I just did a couple of test shots there. So what I probably will do in this photo is a focus stack. So what I'll do is, as you've seen in previous videos, I'll take a photograph with the focus points. I'll take 3 photos with the focus points at the foreground, the midground and the background, and then I'll merge them together in post-processing to try and give us a really sharp image from front to back. So this is my first leading line composition. I'm going to give it a go. Just being super critical about this image as well. I'm not sure what to do about it right now. There's a lot going on. It's a bit noisy. I'm not sure if I can do anything about that really, but we'll take it, we'll see, and I'll come back soon. Okay, that's photo number 1 taken, leading line. I think it turned out pretty well. We'll see in post-processing. Now let's go and see if we can find ourselves a framing shot. Now seems like the perfect opportunity for that because the sun's coming through the clouds and it looks amazing. Really hoping I can find a decent frame for that. All right, I'll be back shortly. All right, So second shot of the day, framing, and there's this wonderful little bridge here down in Little Beach, which is full of perfect man-made frames for me. So what I've done with this one, because we've got the sun rising over there right now, which is looking pretty awesome, is I've come down and I've placed my camera just down here with a little bit of zoom on it, just to compress the background a little bit, and it's looking through one of these sections on the bridge here to frame that rising sun. And that's the idea behind framing. The idea is that you pick a subject or a scene and you try and frame it with something. Now that can be a natural frame, and if we look here actually, if you can see here, but there is kind of a natural frame itself. The headland, two headlands make a natural frame, so I could probably take that as a photo opportunity as well. But here I went with this man-made frame, but we're framing the subject inside of a frame essentially, to add some constraints to the image to really help focus the viewer's eye. And I want the viewer of this image to focus on that beautiful rising sun, and the frame provides that constraint in this situation. So there we go, that's our framing. Now let's try the next one. Okay, on to the next compositional technique, and that is contrast. Now there are three, there might be more, but I know of three different types of contrast when it comes to photography. Tonal contrast, so the difference between essentially the blacks and the whites. Color contrast, so finding two complementary colors in the same scene to provide that contrast in the image. So for example, red and green are, if you look on a color wheel, red and green are complementary colors, and they provide really strong or high contrast in an image. So if I could find a subject that was red and a subject that was green and try and compose them in an image together, that would be a high contrast image. And then we've got conceptual contrast, and this is something that I'm learning a little bit about at the minute, but the idea behind conceptual contrast is it's very subjective, it's very abstract. But for example, it might be me taking a photograph of something natural alongside something man-made, perhaps that man-made thing looking very out of place in that natural landscape. And a few days ago in another video I took a photo of a brake drum or brake disc next to a log that had washed up, and that's a good example, I think, of conceptual contrast. We've got something man-made with something natural. So what I'm looking for now is something that I can use as a subject or a photograph to demonstrate that contrast rule. So I'm going to have a look around and see if we can find anything. How about this for an idea? We've got something man-made here, but it's man-made out of something that's natural, and that's driftwood. I'm going to go with this as my example of contrast. It's going to be a conceptual contrast example. But also there's some tonal contrast in there as well, or colour contrast should I say, in there as well, because we've got some very opposing colours here. We've got the white sand or the yellow sand and some very dark waterlogged, water-soaked driftwood at the minute. So we've got lots of different elements of a good contrast composition here. Now I need to find the best way to take a photo of this to make it interesting as well as incorporate contrast. So I'm going to have a walk around this and see if I can figure out a good place to take a photo. Finding situations where these rules apply is one thing. Finding interesting ways to present those subjects or those rules is a different thing altogether. And so what I did was I thought I'd maybe fly the drone up just directly above the man-made shelter there and take a photo from above, and I'll show you that on the screen right now. And I think this provides a really interesting way of looking at that subject, the subject being the man-made shelter or structure. But it also highlighted to me as well, again, another contrast there, which was the color contrast between the warm and the cold colors, or the light colored sand and the very dark colored wood. I also, whilst I had the drone in the air, and I'll show you this photo again in a second, went over the shoreline where the blue sea looks really blue on the photo on the drone screen. The blue sea was meeting the yellow sand, and again we've got some great color contrasts there between the cold colors of the sea, the blue, and the warm colors, the yellow colors of the sand. And hopefully you agree that provides a really good color contrast there as well. So I like that image. So I think we've over-indexed on contrast as a compositional technique. We've got color contrast. I don't think we've got tonal contrast. I'll have a look at some of the photos when we get back, and we've definitely got conceptual contrast as well. In the same drone photo that you're looking at on the screen right now, we've also got a really interesting pattern. We've got the blue ocean and the yellow sand divided in the middle diagonally across that screen, and I deliberately took that photo in that way so that I could represent a pattern, and that's my pattern rule of composition there. So hopefully you can see that pattern. I'm sure there are others around the beach here, but I am running a little short on time, so keen to get your thoughts on what you think of that as a pattern in terms of compositional rules. The last thing I have now to find before I head off is symmetry. What about joining contrast and framing in the same shot? What I've got here is a conceptual contrast frame, so it's a man-made structure made out of natural things in the driftwood, but it's also providing a great frame for the rising sun. So I'm going to take that photo now because I'm pretty happy with this one. Thanks a lot for watching today's video. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you're going to be able to take some of these compositional techniques and apply them to your own photographs. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my content, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps with the channel. And if you'd like to get notified when I publish new videos, don't forget to hit the bell icon next to the subscribe icon as well. With all that being said, it's time for me to say ta-ra.